Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Hello and welcome. I'm Phil McKinney. This week, we are reaching deep into the archive and bringing you one of our most downloaded shows. Enjoy. Hello and welcome. I'm Phil McKinney, and I'm the host of Killer Innovations. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. One of the questions that I want to talk about today is really around decision making. Making hard decisions can bring the most senior leaders to their knees, no matter how calm they look on the outside. So what is it that causes that hesitation at that critical decision time? It's what Patrick McGinnis calls FOBO, the fear of a better option. So what is it? Patrick describes it as being paralyzed at the prospect of actually committing to something out of fear that we might be choosing something that wasn't absolutely perfect. The result is you get stuck in the analysis paralysis time and you never make the decision. You keep putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Now, there's a sister term that Patrick also created to FOBO, which is FOMO, the fear of missing out. Now, this FOMO term has been all over social media, and it's actually a quite common term that gets tossed around in the innovation space, and in particularly Silicon Valley. FOMO describes the fear of not doing something that will leave you at a disadvantage. So you've got FOBO, the fear of a better option, so you don't make the decision. FOMO is you've got this fear that if you don't do something, you'll be at a disadvantage. You'll miss out. You will not have that one magic piece of data that will give you perfect information. So our fear of missing out, meaning I've got to go out and get that perfect information, feeds our FOBO, our fear of a better option. Because our fear of a better option is I'm waiting for perfect information. FOMO, the fear of missing out, is the result of saying yes to everything because you don't want to miss out on anything. Now, in my own personal acknowledgement, I have gotten caught many times in FOMO. I used to say yes to every request to speak or teach, no matter the impact to myself or my family. More than a handful of times, I caught myself dashing to London to deliver some kind of a dinner speech, and then turn around and flying right back to the States. So think about that. 18 hours in the air for a 45-minute talk, a 2-hour dinner conversation, 6 hours of sleep, and then a flight back. So I'd fly 10,600 miles from San Francisco to London round trip. I would do it all in 27 hours. That's the equivalent of me traveling nearly 400 miles per hour for the entire time I was away from the house. That's 400 miles per hour for 27 hours. No wonder I was just absolutely exhausted when I came back from these trips. FOMO told me I had to be there because I could miss out on something. That this meeting, that talk, find the new contact would give me that one piece of information that would give me perfect information. But I was moving so fast, I was rushing through the experience, I was dashing to do these things and turn around and coming right back with no hope of finding whatever it was I was missing out on because I was just blowing through the activity so fast. And it's not just FOMO. When you combine that fear of missing out and that fear of a better option, so FOMO, I'm looking for that perfect piece of information. That fear of a better option is I'm waiting for that perfect piece of information because there might be a better option. You fall into, again, what Patrick has called FODA, the fear of doing anything. FODA is that paralysis that turns into fear that you can't even make. You just don't do anything. You just basically shut down. You are deer in the headlights. So, how do you deal with all of this? How do you deal with that push to go get perfect information, that concern in the back of your head that there's a better option out there, and then ultimately getting yourself caught where you just go deer in the headlights and you totally shut down. Well, that's the topic for today's show. Decision making in the innovation game is absolutely critical, and falling into that paralysis stage is absolutely deadly. You have to find a way to make the decision and recognize when you're falling into these traps of FOMO and that FOBO, the fear of a better option. Now, in my case, I truly believe that FOMO for me was fed by my imposter syndrome. That nagging thought that I wasn't quite good enough, that I constantly had to prove myself. And my preferred way of doing this was to be a workaholic, to find ways to validate who I was, and do that through just pure tenacity, proving it to myself, to others, to anybody that was watching, that I was good enough. Now, the breakthrough came for me when a newspaper article was written about me, which forced me to go public with a secret that fed my imposter syndrome. Now, I'm not going to cover all the details of that article and my imposter syndrome. There's a blog post over at philmckinney.com. You can feel free to drop in and read that. I did a TED Talk this year, so that is up and posted. So you can just search for Phil McKinney TED on Google or Bing or whatever you use for your search engine, and it'll come right up. And I'll put a link in the show notes. So go ahead and hop on over to killerinnovations.com, and you'll see the link to the video. And I'd encourage you to watch that. It's actually it was a pretty personal message, giving you a little bit of insight into myself and what goes on when you in the crazy talk in our heads to convince ourselves that we are not good enough. So, in my case, I really felt that this imposter syndrome was what was feeding my fear of missing out, because I never felt I was good enough. I didn't feel like I knew enough. I wasn't educated enough. So I had to run around and collect up information. I had to be in every activity, in every meeting, in every discussion, and every pitch event, and because I just felt like if I got that one more piece of information, it would solve all my problems. So how do I now deal with this FOMO problem? Now that I've gotten over, or I should say you never really get over imposter syndrome because it always tends to creep back in. But in this case, how do I deal with my FOMO? Well, I created a criteria for myself that helped me prioritize the request for my time and attention. Now, FOMO is that one way to justify that drive that we have to be busy, right? I don't know how many times you run into people and they're always telling you like, wow, man, I was up till 2 a.m. working on this proposal, and then had to run and take the kids to school, and then I had a board meeting with a charity that people actually hang out there with pride the fact that they're busy. And busy's not a good thing when you're trying to be a top-notch, world-class innovator, because you need that breathing time. And FOMO is just that way to justify that. It's that little voice in our head telling us we need to go one more pitch night. I can't tell you how many pitch nights I have done over my years in Silicon Valley, and that the next one is going to be the one that opens the door to ultimate success, that perfect contact, that perfect information. And think about it. Now, my analogy here may not apply to you, but it applies to me, and I think about it in the way of, think about Ansel Adams, that world-class photographer. Ansel Adams did not walk around and just snap random pictures in the hopes of creating a masterpiece. He was methodical, he was strategic, he was deliberate, he used his skill sets, he planned. It wasn't like, I'm going to run around of fear of missing out, so I'm just going to drive down the road and snap 10,000 pictures, and maybe one of those will be a masterpiece. Going to random events, meetings, activities in hopes of randomly finding that one contact, that one piece of information, that one idea, has a near zero, let me repeat that, has a near zero chance of being successful. And that is really the challenge that we face, all of us, with this fear of missing out. This fear that if I'm not there, I'm going to miss something. I'm going to miss out on something. I'm not going to be in the loop. I'm the one with less information than everybody else that's at that thing, whatever it is, meeting, event, speech, whatever. So it's that thing that we have to constantly tell ourselves that and be on guard of, that we don't get sucked into it. I cannot recount the number of times that I've got myself stuck in that fear of a better option. That thinking in the back of my head that it's always there's something better. Now think back to the last time you were choosing where to go on holiday. In my case, I tend to get stuck trying to pick the hotel. I found myself using multiple apps, searching Google, and then coming back to search some more over many, many days. I find myself stuck because of a fear that there is a better option, a better view, a cheaper price, just around the corner if I could just keep searching, just go around and keep that one more search or the one more deal that pops up on a very specific day. This drives my family crazy. And then, before I make the final decision, I will always check to understand what the cancellation policy, just in case a better option does appear, that I can grab onto it and run with the better option. Yeah, I know. It's a pretty sad testament, particularly for someone, like me who's built his career on making the tough decisions and innovating and taking the risk on new ideas. Now, in my case, my wife is the exact opposite. She is an absolutely get-it-done person who will commit and commit quickly. Now, this is the perfect example of where opposites attract, and this is also, honestly, a point of friction between us, because I will come home and she's already made a decision. In fact, we just recently had our house here in Colorado painted. It hadn't been painted in 15 years, and the weather here can be a little brutal at times. So this was the year. We talked about it. Yes, we're going to get it painted. So I said, well, let's get some quotes and see what happens, right? Well, I came home, and not only did she get the quotes, but she made the decision as to which painter she chose, committed, signed the contract, and the house got painted. In fact, it finished yesterday. I totally freak out in those kinds of situations. Like, well, no, we need to think about it. And are you sure they're going to match the color? All those kinds of, the what if scenarios, which is hilarious. My wife looks at me and she goes, look, you act this way at home. I know you don't act that way at work, but when you're at home, why? Right? And in fact, she has found this very clever way to get me out of my fear of a better option. And that is, example, a few years back, we went on a cruise from Southampton, England, to Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Yes, that is an Atlantic crossing. A 2-week cruise, including 8 days at sea as we crossed the Atlantic. Now, 8 days at sea, many of you are probably going, oh my God, I don't know how I would do that. I absolutely loved it. We only saw one ship on day 2, but I had 8 days. I wrote every morning, working on the second book, which at this point will never get done, so I'm not setting an expectation that book will ever get finished. But I was able to really spend the time writing. I was able to relax. I had lost all concept of days of the week. It was a perfect trip. Now, she knew I needed a break. She knew that I had an obligation to my publisher to finish the outline of the book, and she found a really cheap set of tickets. My wife is as cheap as they come. So how did she get me to commit? She booked the tickets, the cruise, and the airfare as non-refundable. Yes, she booked them as non-refundable. That simple step took out that nagging FOBO, that fear of a better option, since there was no other option open to me. They're non-refundable. And I'm not as cheap as my wife, but neither my wife or I came from money. So, we tend to conserve, we tend to not spend. We would prefer to give our money to charity than blow it on unnecessaries. And so that's how she deals with it, is by booking all of our vacations with non-refundable. Now, when it comes to innovation, deciding to move forward on an idea to commit the resources, people and money, it is ripe for FOBO, that fear of better options. I've seen leaders hesitate to give a team the green light on a project because they were not yet convinced that this was the perfect idea. Newsflash, there is never the perfect idea. In this case, FOBO could be masking a more general fear of failure. In a leader's mind, not committing means zero risk of picking something and having it fail. But not deciding means zero chance of innovating ever, never taking an idea forward. So what should be the objective? The fear of having an idea not be perfect and fail, or not trying? In my book, it's pretty clear. The objective is to innovate. And to do that, you need to try your ideas. You need to test. And look, more likely 90% of your ideas will fail. And that's okay. FOBO, that fear of a better option, is the enemy of innovation. It's the tool that the innovation antibodies will use. So what is an innovation antibody? An innovation antibody is that person inside your organization, or if you're the leader, that innovation antibody is that voice in your head telling you that this is not the perfect idea. It's too expensive. There might be a better idea or a better option. We've tried that before. It'll never work. All of the negatives as to why you should not move forward. And look, you'll run into innovation antibodies all over the place. And I've talked about it 1,000 times. There's multiple chapters in my book dealing with innovation antibodies. There's podcasts at Killer Innovations about it, and I've written about it over on the blog over at philmckinney.com. So you can go check those out. And there's actually tools and tricks and approaches you can use to defeat the innovation antibodies. But what I've really become sensitive most recently is all of those tools show you how to deal with the innovation antibodies that are other people. You're the innovator, you're presenting an idea, and somebody else is negative to the idea. They're the ones pushing back on you. They're the ones telling you, it's not good enough. You need to, we've tried it before. It's too expensive. It's whatever. What we haven't dealt with is the innovation antibody in your head, and that is FOBO. That FOBO, that fear of a better option, that's the thing in our head that turns us into our own innovation antibody. When it comes to that fear of better option, what are you to do? You find yourself in that paralyzed position of not wanting to commit because there might be that better option that is out there. You need to learn to be decisive, to make decisions. And you make the decisions and move on. Don't constantly dwell on it. So here are 4 ways not to get caught in the trap of that fear of a better option. Number 1, Patrick McGinnis, who actually coined the term FOBO, has this trick he uses. He calls it ask the watch. He'll take a whole list of options and decisions he needs to make, and he'll boil them down to 2 options. And then he assigns each item to either the left or the right side of his watch. What do I mean by that? So if you look at the watch face, and in this case, if you have an analog watch, it's the right-hand side of the watch. So 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, down to 6. Left-hand side of the watch is 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. So left and right. If you have a digital watch, the one on the right that points to your fingertips, assuming you're wearing the watch on your left hand, and the left-hand side is the one pointing up to your arm. He uses an analog watch. That's where it really works at. And what he does, though, is he then comes up to his two decisions and he looks down to see where the second hand is at that moment. So if the second hand is sweeping past the 3 second mark, or if you have a digital watch, it's clicking off between 12 and 6, 12, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If that's the case, that's decision A. If it's past that, and 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 up to 12, it's decision 2. And he lets the watch make the decision. When you find yourself in that paralyzed position, doing something as ask the watch can just help take that decision making out of your hands. Because if it was an obvious decision, an obvious answer, you would have picked one. So they're probably equally good. In this case, make that decision. And in this case, the decision is made for you and therefore out of your hands. Goes back a little bit to my wife booking vacations with non-refundable tickets to kind of get me out of this constantly wanting to search for a better option. Now, this sounds silly, but trust me, it actually works. Patrick's trick on Ask the Watch works. Taking the final decision when you have 2 good options out of your control, again, releases you from that doubt. And so try it. Just next time you get a decision and you get down to 2 items and you're not quite sure what to do, try it. So that's number 1. Ask the watch. Number 2 is you set up a personal criteria. Now, as I shared earlier in the show, I set up a personal criteria for me, particularly when I figured it out that I was letting my fear of missing out drive me to become a workaholic, and the impact that it had on my family, my wife, my kids, friends. And I kind of sat down and got my head screwed on straight by setting up what is my personal criteria. Now, this works for me. It may not work for you. And if you've been a long-time listener of the show, you've heard this before from me. The criteria I use is what I call the 5 Fs. Now, the 5 Fs, again, work for me. They may not work for you. The 5 Fs are faith, family, friends, fitness, and finances. Faith, whatever you believe in it. You know, whether you're Buddhist, Hindu, Christian, satanic, whatever you believe in it. And what I have found is when I put my faith first, it helps set kind of the guardrails for me on what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, what I should do, what I should not do. And I make that a priority. That's the number 1 priority for me. Number 2 is my family. My wife, my kids, my grandkids. My parents have long passed on. My in-laws are still alive. And we're spending a fair amount of time helping them. Family. Friends. It's through my friends, my mentors, that I've been able to achieve what I achieved. And I'm making new friends. People that I can have an influence on and that they can influence me. As is common, the common language going around, Tony Robbins uses it, and Seth Godin is a big believer of this. Tim Ferriss talks about it on his show a lot, which is you are the average of the 5 people you hang around with. Now, I'm not talking about family. You don't have a choice on them. You have a choice on your friends. You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So pick your friends carefully. But if you're smart and you get friends that are actually better than you, have had to have their heads screwed on straight, are more people that you would put above yourself from the standpoint of comparison, then you need to spend time with them for them to have the influence on you. So you need to make it a priority. Fitness, I don't work as hard as I should at this. I'm trying to get better, watching what I eat. And then finances. Finances meaning providing for myself, providing for my family, and being able to use what I've been blessed with to help others. Now, finances is an interesting one. When I've put it higher on my priority list, FOMO really kicked in and caused me to chase the finances, and that really screwed me up. Now, I'll score a request. If I get a request for a speech or to mentor or to go teach a class, I score it against these 5 things. So for instance, if I get a request to speak, I'll score the request against the criteria. Is this request neutral or aligned with my faith obligations? Right? There's certain things I just won't do if I get a request. Do the dates work with my family obligations? Or could my wife travel with me? And she's traveling more and more with me here lately. Do I have commitments to friends that I've made? Have I set an expectation to be there for a friend? Will this request negatively impact my fitness? I can tell you that my previous dashes around the world were very negative to my health. It took me days, if not weeks, to recover, which in turn impacted my family. Number 5, will this request result in commensurate reward today or in the future to warrant not doing something else, my opportunity cost? For me, requests that can reward the charities I support is just as much or even more so valuable to me and my time than just getting paid to do something. Now, I don't stop there. I always look at alternatives, such as responding to requests to speak via Zoom. Zoom is a sponsor of this show, so I want to be upfront about that. But I was recently on a call with Eric Ewing, who's the founder and CEO of Zoom, and he's a personal friend. From launch to IPO, which was over 5 years, Eric only got on planes 7 times. That's right, 7 flights in 5 years. He did everything using his own product, Zoom Video, and took a company from startup to IPO. And Eric's personal net worth now, post-IPO, is a little bit north of $2 billion with a B. And he did it without getting on an airplane and impacting his family. He was able to make every one of his son's basketball games. It is not an either or. Eric is the perfect example of both, while maintaining his personal criteria on how to decide what to do while keeping his priorities straight. So, again, set your own personal priorities and stick to it. Number 3, ranking. When it comes to innovation, use your funnel and ranking process to create a list of the next best ideas. These are the ideas based on the ranking score from the FIRE framework. If you're not aware of the FIRE, it's in its role in innovation, I'll include a link in the show notes. We talk about it a lot on this show. With the ranking list of your ideas, force a decision that says something like, each quarter we will fund the idea with the highest score. You're not waiting for one to come in and like, well, there might be one that has a better score. We'll wait for it. Make the decision every quarter, pick the best idea, the one that has the highest score in your innovation funnel, and just do it. This will force the decision, and then you can move on. And what's the number 4? Well, once you made a decision, then apply the old Ronald Reagan maxim. Trust but verify. Trust your decision, but verify. If the decision is not delivering the results you expected, then adjust. You can always adjust in many cases, or flat out change your decision. So with these 4 ways, ask the watch, create your personal criteria, ranking your ideas and choosing the highest ranked ideas, and then trust but verify, you can be aware of your own FODA, the fear of doing anything. That fear of making a decision and change. We will not have perfect information and therefore will never make the perfect decision. But you still need to make a decision, so go make it and move on. You can send me an email at phil@killerinnovations.com. That comes directly to me. And again, I would ask, please let other people know, share, tell people about the show. When we started this podcast back in 2005, we did it in response to Bob Davis, my mentor. When I asked him how I could pay him back, he laughed. He goes, "There's no way you could pay it back. You have to pay it forward." This is my effort to pay it forward, to share with you the experiences and lessons learned over my career as an innovator, an inventor, a technologist, a futurist, author, podcaster, a whole bunch of hats that I've worn, but wanting to share with you my experiences, what worked, what didn't work, my regrets, my successes, and my failures. And hopefully it helps you as you go through your own careers to avoid some of the pitfalls I fell into and to have great success with all of your creativity and all of your innovation efforts. So thanks again for taking the time out of the busy schedule. Really appreciate it. And we will talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.